Few historical debates in Eastern Europe are as emotionally charged as the question of Romanian origins. For generations, schoolbooks have told a clear, simple story: that modern Romanians are the descendants of Roman colonists who settled north of the Danube, in the ancient province of Dacia. The narrative is elegant. The Romans conquered the Dacians, Latinized them, and after centuries of transformation, the Romanian language and people were born. It's a tale of resilience, of continuity against all odds. But beneath that patriotic clarity lies a troubling fact. There's a massive historical gap, almost 500 years, where no written sources mention any population north of the Danube at all. How can a people so proud of their Roman heritage simply vanish from the record for half a millennium? This silence has fueled an alternative, and much more controversial idea, that the ancestors of modern Romanians didn't stay north of the Danube after the Roman withdrawal. Instead, they may have retreated south, into the Balkans, blending with Latin-speaking communities there before migrating back north centuries later. To some, this sounds absurd. To others, it explains everything. The linguistic similarities between Romanian and the languages of the southern Balkans, the shared folklore, and even the pastoral traditions seem to hint that the Romanian identity was shaped not in the ruins of ancient Dacia, but in the rugged heart of the Balkan Peninsula. Archaeology only deepens the mystery. The centuries following Rome's abandonment of Dacia show no clear sign of a continuous Romanized population. The settlements vanish, Latin inscriptions stop, and material culture shifts dramatically. Yet, south of the Danube, in Moesia and Thrace, Roman life continued much longer, with Latin-speaking communities surviving well into the early Middle Ages. Could it be that the ancestors of the Romanians weren't isolated Dacians clinging to their Latin tongue in the north, but rather Balkan peoples who carried that Latin heritage with them when they eventually crossed the river again? The question may sound academic, but its implications are enormous. It challenges centuries of national identity and historical pride. Were the Romanians truly born in the shadow of the Carpathians, or in the hills and valleys of the Balkans, long before they ever crossed north again? History, it seems, is never as simple as the stories we tell ourselves. The Daco-Roman continuity theory rests on a single powerful image: the idea that, even after Rome abandoned Dacia in the 3rd century, a Latin-speaking population stubbornly remained behind the Danube, preserving its language and culture through centuries of chaos. It's a comforting narrative, one that links modern Romanians directly to the glory of Rome. But when you look closer, the foundation starts to crumble. After the Roman withdrawal, every archaeological and written trace of a Latin population north of the river disappears. Roman towns were abandoned, roads fell into ruin, and even the legions that once protected the frontier never returned. The chronicles of neighboring peoples, Goths, Huns, Slavs, mention tribes and migrations, but never any Romanians or Latin-speaking survivors. For nearly half a millennium, the land that would one day become Romania fades from recorded history. Language is often cited as proof of continuity, but it too raises difficult questions. Romanian is undeniably a Romance language, yet its structure and vocabulary are unlike those of any Western Romance tongue. It contains strong Balkan features: the postposed definite article, shared idioms, and grammatical patterns that exist in Albanian, Bulgarian, and Macedonian, but nowhere else in the Latin world. These linguistic parallels suggest that Romanian evolved not in isolation north of the Danube, but in a multilingual Balkan environment where Latin mingled with Thracian, Greek, and Slavic influences. If true, that means the roots of Romanian culture may lie hundreds of kilometers south of where national history books traditionally place them. There's also the demographic puzzle. After the 6th century, waves of Slavic migrations swept through the region, transforming both sides of the Danube. If a large Romanized population had truly survived in Dacia, it would have left some trace. A Latin toponym here, a continuous material culture there. Instead, we find abrupt breaks, new pottery styles, new settlement patterns, new burial customs. Everything points to population replacement, not cultural survival. Meanwhile, south of the Danube, Latin-speaking groups are well attested. Byzantine sources describe Vlachs, who endured shepherding peoples whose name would later become synonymous with Romanians, living in the Balkans centuries before the first mention of Romanians north of the river. All of this suggests that the Daco-Roman continuity theory may be less about evidence and more about identity, a story built to connect modern Romanians to Rome's prestige and to anchor their origins firmly on northern soil. But history rarely respects national borders, and the silence of the archaeological record north of the Danube is deafening. If the ancestors of the Romanians were truly there all along, why does history forget them so completely? If the continuity theory begins to unravel, another version of events rises from the south, one that's far more provocative. According to the Balkan origin hypothesis, the ancestors of modern Romanians were never truly isolated north of the Danube. Instead, they lived for centuries within the Romanized provinces of the Balkans, in Moesia, Thrace, and Macedonia, where Latin culture survived long after Rome withdrew from Dacia. In this view, the early Romanians were part of a larger network of Latin-speaking Balkan peoples, but under Byzantine and later Slavic domination. Over time, some of these communities may have migrated north across the Danube, bringing their language, traditions, and pastoral way of life with them. Rather than being the last survivors of Roman Dacia, they could have been the returning sons of the Balkans. Supporters of this theory point to a mountain of linguistic, cultural, and historical clues. Romanian shares its most unique grammatical traits, not with Italian or French, but with languages of the southern Balkans, Albanian, Bulgarian, and Macedonian. This linguistic Balkan Sprachbund reveals centuries of contact and coexistence. Even Romanian's earliest vocabulary reflects a southern setting. Words for plants, animals, and geography match Balkan environments better than those of the Carpathians. And while the Dacians north of the Danube were conquered by Rome for less than 2 centuries, the Balkans remained Roman for nearly 600 years. If any region preserved a living Latin heritage through the Dark Ages, it was the Balkans, not the abandoned province of Dacia. Archaeological and historical evidence adds weight to the argument. Byzantine writers from the 10th and 11th centuries mention Vlachs, semi-nomadic shepherds and traders spread throughout the southern Balkans. These Vlachs spoke a Latin-derived tongue and lived in communities remarkably similar to early Romanian ones. Over time, as political and military conditions shifted, some of these groups are believed to have crossed the Danube into what is now Wallachia and Transylvania. Their presence north of the river becomes visible in records only around the 12th century, precisely when these southern movements were occurring. It's as if the Romanians didn't emerge from silence, but returned from exile. Of course, this idea is controversial because it reverses the national story. It implies that the Romanian identity, the language, the culture, even the sense of Roman continuity, may have been forged south of the Danube, far from the homeland it's now tied to. For some, this undermines the romantic image of unbroken lineage from the ancient Dacians. For others, it strengthens it, proving that the Romanian people are not defined by geography, but by endurance. Whether they originated north or south, they carried the same language and spirit through centuries of migration and transformation. The question isn't just where they came from, but how they survived at all. In the last few decades, New evidence, genetic, linguistic, and archaeological, has complicated the debate even further. Modern genetic studies show that Romanians share close ancestry with other Balkan peoples, suggesting deep southern connections rather than isolation north of the Danube. Yet they also retain distinct patterns that point to centuries of separation and local development. Linguistics tells a similar story. While Romanian is unmistakably a Romance language, its structure bears the fingerprints of the Balkans, features that emerged only through prolonged contact with neighbouring peoples. These clues blur the borders between Dacian and Balkan, between continuity and migration. They reveal a population shaped not by a single homeland, but by a shifting cultural landscape that spanned the Danube and defied easy categorization. This uncertainty has turned into a cultural battlefield. In Romania, the Daco-Roman continuity theory remains a cornerstone of national identity, a proud link to the legacy of Rome and to ancient sovereignty over the northern lands. To question it is often seen as unpatriotic, even heretical. Meanwhile, scholars from neighbouring regions have embraced the Balkan hypothesis as a way to highlight shared roots, regional connections, and the fluid nature of early medieval ethnicity. The debate, then, isn't just about history, it's about who gets to define where the Romanian story truly began. Was it the Roman forts north of the Danube, the Latin villages of Moesia, or somewhere in between, on the ever-shifting frontier that united both worlds? And perhaps that's the real answer. The ancestors of the Romanians weren't strictly northern or southern. They were both. They lived on both sides of the Danube, crossed it, fled from it, and returned to it again and again through centuries of war and empire. Their identity was forged in motion, between the Latin of Rome, the spirit of the Balkans, and the resilience of survival. To call them purely Balkan or purely Dacian is to misunderstand what identity really means in the ancient world. They were a people of continuity and change, of adaptation and persistence, defined not by borders, but by endurance. And so, the question remains open. Were the Romanians originally Balkan, or Dacian heirs who never truly left their land? Maybe both theories are only fragments of a much larger story, one that doesn't fit neatly into maps or timelines. Because in the end, the origins of the Romanians may not lie in one side of the Danube or the other, but in the river itself, a symbol of transition, of crossing, and of the ever-changing current of history.